If you are considering a move to the Pittsburgh area and you are not from here, probably the greatest challenge you will face is finding a real estate agent you can trust. In this video, I want to break down all the things you need to know about moving to the Pittsburgh area that you might not hear from other agents. And if you're unfamiliar with all the areas that the Pittsburgh region has to offer, you definitely need an agent that has experience and knowledge about every one of those areas throughout the region. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the hidden financial traps you might not be aware of, some of the highly localized risks that come with buying a home in Western Pennsylvania, the geographic challenges that impact your daily life and commute. I'm going to talk about how to protect your budget before you make an offer. Ultimately, the goal of this video is to empower you that you have the information you need, that if you are considering a move to the Pittsburgh area, that you feel like you have the right information and that you have found a trusted real estate agent to guide you through that process. My name is Mark McClinchie, and I'm a real estate agent here in the Pittsburgh area. And about 6 years ago, I started a YouTube channel, Mark Knows Pittsburgh, where I cover topics that are pertinent to people moving from out of the area to the Pittsburgh area. So people looking for more information about neighborhoods and schools and the daily life of what it's like living in the Pittsburgh area. I have worked with hundreds of people relocating to the Pittsburgh area. And if you're interested in doing that, please get in touch with me and we'll set up time to talk. The first topic I want to talk about is location. Finding homes where you love the kitchen and love the backyard, that really is the easy part. But really knowing the context of the neighborhood and the community and what it's like to live in that area is really essential information. And I don't know where you can find that online. You can't find it on ChatGPT, you can't find it from Gemini. So there's a few main topics that trip up most people when they start looking for homes in the Pittsburgh area. The first one is looking at the address itself. So you're gonna see the street number, the street address, and then the postal city and the zip code. When you look at that postal city, that is not always indicative of exactly where that particular house sits. So I can think of tons of examples all over the area, but we'll just start with Pittsburgh. So you would think that a Pittsburgh mailing address would put it inside the city limits of Pittsburgh. That is not correct. All addresses within the city limits have Pittsburgh, but then there's a huge swath of the North Hills, there's a big swath of the East End, there's a big swath of the South Hills, Mount Lebanon, and even Upper St. Clair, and many, many, many areas outside of the city of Pittsburgh still have postal cities that say that they are Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then the zip code. And so you have to not just take that as matter of fact, you've got to dig deeper and figure out, well, which municipality it is in, which school district it is in. The next point of confusion is just simply because we have so many municipalities. So if you take Allegheny County, for example, there are 130 municipalities inside Allegheny County alone. And of course, those 130 municipalities are part of 43 separate school districts inside Allegheny County. So every time you move a block or two, you might be entering a new municipality. So that might mean different services, that might mean different property tax rates will come with each municipality. So it is really important to understand that as you're navigating around and looking in the broader North Hills or the broader South Hills, you really zone in and learn the municipalities. Another confusing thing is when you're looking at real estate listings online, you read the description, and oftentimes the listing agent writes that description. They're the ones that are responsible for that. And they might know that their property is located in an area that might not have a great reputation or something like that. Maybe it has a lower median house value. And so to raise up and try to encourage people to think that it has higher value, they borrow the neighboring municipality, which maybe has a higher median price. So you have to be careful when you're reading listing descriptions not to be torn just because somebody writes it might not be true, or maybe they don't even know. Okay, so knowing exactly where the home is the first step, but knowing what might be behind the walls is the topic of our next conversation. So for our second topic that I want to make sure that you are aware of is you're going to be dealing with lots and lots of older homes. The housing stock in the Pittsburgh area is one of the oldest in the country. The majority of housing inventory in the Pittsburgh region is built before 1960. And the systems that were put in, whether it is electrical systems or plumbing systems or the construction materials that were used, all of those have changed throughout the decades. And some of those things are rock solid and doing really well. And other parts of those systems can be really outdated and can be really a risk factor that you need to learn about when you're looking for homes in the Pittsburgh region. So the first area I want to cover is knob and tube wiring. It is considered unsafe, and there's risk factors there of having active knob and tube throughout your home. But knob and tube wiring can be a real challenge for getting homeowners insurance. And so a lot of electricians know how to bypass knob and tube wiring or can safely remove it. And there's ways to do that. But what the real risk is, without ripping down all the walls and knowing exactly what it is, a homeowner's insurance policy, often if they are aware that there's knob and tube wiring in the house, they need you to verify that there is no visible knob and tube wiring. It'll be very difficult to get a quality homeowner's insurance policy with the same, rates and the same coverage that you would get if there were not knob and tube. And if you are a seller that you have knob and tube, or maybe you're not even sure if you have knob and tube, that is definitely something you want to do before listing your home. You want to find that out. Hire an electrician to give you, if you're worried that you might have some old wiring or outdated systems, give them an update. The other issue that we see a lot in older homes is asbestos. Asbestos is used as insulation, oftentimes on ductwork or pipes. You see it coming out of HVAC systems. You see it a lot under a certain tile. You can certainly do a test to find out whether it is positive for asbestos, but you're better off treating it as if it did and make sure that you fully encapsulate things and hire contractors that take the necessary precautions. So the other big issue you see in a lot of older homes is you have sewer lines that are made out of terracotta or cast iron. And both of those materials have been around for decades and decades. And over time, they start to erode and you get lots of problems where there could be cracking or infiltration of roots and water, and eventually leads to a collapse and a backup. And a sewer backup in your basement or house is definitely not something you want to experience if you did not do a sewer inspection and you just said, oh yeah, there's no big issue on the sewer. So make sure, absolutely do not skip the lateral sewer inspection where a camera will give you a video of exactly what's going on in that sewer line, so that you can take confidence that if you buy that home, the sewer line is in good condition. So if you are hearing a lot of good information and you want to reach me directly, I encourage you to go down into the description. There's a link to fill out my intake form. So fill out this form, tell me more about your search, your timeline, your budget, what you're looking for, where you are in the process, and book an appointment. All in one form. You can make that happen and it'll go directly to me. I'll reach back out, we'll confirm that appointment time, we'll set it up, and we'll have a great discussion about what your needs are, develop a plan, answer all of your questions to make sure you feel comfortable on navigating that next step in choosing a real estate agent and committing to making a move to the Pittsburgh area. But we can do all of that once you fill out that form. So the next topic I want to cover are some of the hidden risks that are unique to Western Pennsylvania. Let's go through them one at a time. So Pittsburgh does have a number of regions that are prone to flooding. There are specific flood zones throughout the Pittsburgh region. And, depending on what online portal you're using, you may or may not have the right FEMA map to show you whether that property is in an official flood zone. So that is one risk of making sure that you're not buying a property in a flood zone. If you are, you would need FEMA flood insurance. We do get a lot of flooding in the Pittsburgh area in homes that are not in flood zones. And that flooding is because of maybe some localized flooding, but often it's, we have old infrastructure and our stormwater systems cannot handle the overflow and the runoff that, when you get some of these spring and summer rains that are, pulling down 5, 10, 15 inches of rain in very short amounts of time, it is creating floodwaters that can fill up areas that don't normally see flooding. We have a lot of wet basement issues in the Pittsburgh area. We have a lot of people that have remediated those with exterior French drains and interior French drains and sump pumps and all the rest of those mitigation systems. And some of them are working really well, and some of them are super old. They've been around for a while, maybe are not working the way they should. And then some don't have them at all, and they need to have them. So keep in mind that having a wet basement and having flooding issues is a serious issue that you need to be concerned about, and make sure that you're working with someone that has their eye on that issue. Throughout Western Pennsylvania, there are tons of mines, and many of those have been abandoned and people are not sure that they're there. And so if you go to the state, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, there's actually a map of the entire state, and any mines that might be in the area, you can find out whether the properties you're looking at might have, abandoned mines or even active mines. And it is a good idea that if you're anywhere near a potential mine that may have been there, 100 years ago or more, you can get mine subsidence insurance. It's super affordable. And so getting mine subsidence insurance is definitely a great idea. And just doing research on what are the areas that are the most active for those versus areas that do not have any mines in them. Keep that in mind if you are new to the Pittsburgh area. All right, so a number of the issues I've mentioned can definitely hit your pocketbook and be quite painful financially. And the next topic I want to talk about is also directly coming at your pocketbook. So let's talk about property taxes. So first thing to understand is that all property taxes are based on the assessed value of the home. And what they do is a lot of counties in areas around the country do reassessments every single year, and they just do it by formulas, and it's updated all the time. And you kind of always know what the current assessed value of a house is. But in Pennsylvania, they've left it up to each county to decide how they're going to assess property values. And you always start with the base year. The base year in Allegheny County is 2012. And so that was sort of the starting point in 2012. And so everybody was paying, their millage rates. Now, of course, those rates, the millage rates for each municipality, each school district, and of course the county, that the county was the same rate, but then the municipality and the school district were different. So those three entities make up your property tax burden. So you add all three of those up and you get a total millage rate. Millage rates in Allegheny County range from the mid 20s all the way up to mid to high 40s. I think there's a few municipalities that might even be up in the low 50s, but most are probably in the 30s. The further we get away from 2012, the more complicated it gets to really fairly and accurately figure out, well, how much should that house be worth? And so every year, Allegheny County comes up with what they call a common level ratio. It's basically to translate the current market value into a 2012 value. So for example, in 2026, the math is actually pretty easy because the common level ratio is 50.14%. So let's just call it 50%. So if you were to buy a $400,000 home in 2026, the assessed value of that $400,000 home would be $200,000 because it would be multiplied by 50%. And then you'd pay your millage rate. So then let's say if you're where you live, where it's 37 mills of property taxes, you would pay that times the $200,000 assessed value. So that's how you're going to figure out your property taxes. And that's what it should be. And so then the second issue is when you're looking for a home, it has an assessed value, and chances are that assessed value probably hasn't changed in a long, long time. Nobody's updated it. And when you buy, there's a very good chance that if you buy that $400,000 home, it's currently assessed at maybe $100,000, or maybe $150,000. And so just because you're looking at a home online and you see the taxes, there's a very good chance that once you buy the house, it's going to change. And usually the instigator to that change is the local school district. So all that to say is you need to be prepared of what your taxes will be when you buy a home. You have to be careful. Talk with your real estate agent, I actually have a property tax calculator. I built a little spreadsheet that covers all of Allegheny County and several of the surrounding counties. I share that with my clients. So if you think that is a tool that you'd be interested in, just email me or text me. I'd be glad to share that with you so you can start plugging in and doing your own math to figure out what the taxes will be so that you can plan for it. The next topic I want to cover is the issue of air quality. So admittedly, I am not an expert with air quality, but if you do any quick Google search, and you'll find that Pittsburgh is known to have some of the worst air quality in the country. Now, some of that I don't think is entirely accurate because there are a number of monitors that gather that data, and some of the readings that are taken only come from the one monitor that happens to be next to a coal-fired coke plant that's down in Clairton. And so that is not indicative of what's happening in the entire region, which is all that to say is that you need to do your research and know that there are certain areas. So the two known areas that I can speak about, the one I just mentioned is down, it's the Clairton Steelworks that is off of the Monongahela River. And so generally our weather is moving from west to east. And so some of the monitors are to the east of that Clairton plant and they have high readings. And so if air quality is important to you, you want to do some research, I can point you to a number of resources that will give you that information. Allegheny County has some great resources, for example. The other known area is up in Monaca, up in Beaver County. You have the cracker plant, the Shell cracker plant up in Monaca. There are some readings in that area, and there's a number of people that have done research that are saying that there is some harmful air quality up in that area. So if you're up along the Ohio River Valley, and again, generally moving west to east, some of the wind is carrying some of that pollution and some of the particles that are being emitted from that plant that can be harmful. So if you are looking for property in some of those communities, be aware that there are some air quality issues you should be aware of. So speaking of geography that might lead to some negative things, for our final topic, we're going to talk about geography also having a major impact on people's daily life. So the number of people that need to commute to the city center is still a pretty big group of people. And even if you're not commuting daily, there's certainly enough going on in the downtown area, in the core of the city center, that you'll need to go there frequently. So everyone thinking about a move to the Pittsburgh area probably has to make their way downtown at some point or another. And where you purchase a home, there could be a number of areas that will lead to sort of a commute trap, that you thought it was going to be an easy way to get to downtown, but you later found out by doing it on a daily basis that it is way more difficult than you thought it would be. You know, right now I'm thinking about communities out in the eastern suburbs. If you are commuting into downtown, you are more than likely going to be on the Parkway East. And the only way from the Parkway East to get to downtown is through the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. There will be quite a situation this summer when they are actually putting in a new bridge right after the Squirrel Hill Tunnel on the outbound side, right after the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. There's a brand new bridge that's going to be rolled into place, but the entire parkway is going to be shut down for over a month. And that is just going to snarl traffic. The other challenge that I think you can sometimes get is, oh, I'll move out further to the suburbs, but some of our suburbs are getting crowded. You know, one area that I think of often is the Cranberry area. And this is an area that, 20, 30 years ago was surrounded by lots of farmland, and it was, starting to grow, but it's really exploded in the last 20 or 30 years. And you only have a few main roads. You've got Route 19 going north and south, and you've got Route 228 going east and west. And those are your main arteries, and they just keep trying to make them wider and wider and to add more lanes, but you still get a ton of volume, you got tons of intersections. And so I do think there's people that have moved out there that, didn't realize that it was congested as they were led to believe. One last area that I'll cover that maybe on a map looks like it wouldn't be too bad, but I'm sort of picking on all sides of the city. But one would be South Fayette, that area that is just to the west of Interstate 79. And so it looks like, without traffic, it's not too bad of a commute, but it's a fairly long distance, and you're gonna travel up Interstate 79 going north. You're not gonna run into too many problems there. But assuming you went up 79 and then you go east on 376, that's the Parkway West, you're gonna go toward downtown, you're gonna have to go through the Fort Pitt Tunnel, and you're definitely gonna hit some traffic there. Okay, so if you've made it this far, hopefully I haven't scared you away from coming to Pittsburgh at all. But like any region, any area you're considering moving to, no place is perfect. Pittsburgh has its challenges. It's important to be aware of what those challenges are, but the benefits of living in this amazing place, I think, far outweigh some of the challenges that we have. And if you have a great real estate agent to help you navigate those challenges, making sure you understand what you're getting into and taking all the necessary precautions to deal with those risks, you'll be super happy with the end result. So again, please reach out to me to set up a consultation. I'd be glad to help you. If you are looking for another resource that might be useful to you, also down in the description is a link to my relocation guide. So totally free to download. You're gonna get information on what it's like living in the region, learning more about all the great events that happen throughout the year in the Pittsburgh area, learning about our education systems, learning about the cultural offerings and all the sporting events that we have and all the sports teams, as well as at the back of the guide, I do a deep dive into many of the most popular communities that families that I work with are interested in. So you'll learn about the schools and the real estate markets and get all the data related to those communities. So please download that relocation guide. I hope it's helpful and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for watching this video and welcome to Pittsburgh.